Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 50 for May 23rd, 2017. Hey everyone, Daniel Rubino, editor for Windows Central, joined with Zach Bowden for a special edition of the Windows Central Podcast because today is Surface Day. In China, Microsoft announced the new Surface Pro, not the Surface Pro 5, although technically it's the Surface Pro 5. Zach, how are you doing today?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
I'm exhausted. Although I'm not in China. I came close to going to China, but at the last minute we decided against that, also because of visa issues. But Mark Wim, our videographer, is actually in Shanghai covering the events, which is now over. But let's go through the news for the day. Lots of stuff to unravel here. We should mention the Surface Pro, which comes out June 15th, and it will launch in 26 markets for the first time. So although we've had these launches before, it's always been like US and Canada, and then it's like a couple months later, it's a little bit later for other countries. It's always been a very slow rollout, but this time it's going to 26 countries at once. Now, I hesitate to call it global. It is kind of global-ish, but obviously if you're in India or Mexico or some other countries, you want to be counted there, and unfortunately you're not. But that doesn't mean you won't get it eventually. Zach, what do you think of this Surface Pro and Microsoft's announcement today?
I think it's a nice upgrade over the Surface Pro 4. I know there were rumors before the announcement that the new Surface would be a very minor update, but although the new Surface Pro looks very similar to the Surface Pro 4, it's actually not as minor as many people are expecting. It has a bunch of new features. It has display dial functionality now, so if you have a display dial, you can stick it on the screen and it actually works like it would on a Surface Studio. They also call the new kickstand, the kickstand now has the studio mode ability, which essentially just means you can push it down a little bit further and it lays a little bit more flatter, which is nice, I guess. So the Surface Pro and the Surface Studio both have studio mode now with Surface dial support, which is great. We've also got new accessories such as the type cover and pen. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Improvements to the actual inking on the display. I think it's a lot faster now. Microsoft says it's the fastest inking technology ever.
21 milliseconds. Yes.
Which is impressive.
To put that in perspective, although we're talking milliseconds, so as humans, we don't get that much perspective on this, but I believe the first Surface was 85 milliseconds, and then it went down to, at some point, to 50 milliseconds, probably for the Surface Pro 3, and then 45 milliseconds for Surface Pro 4, and now they basically cut that in half and have gone down to 21 milliseconds for Surface Pro 5th generation. And why that's impressive, Zach, if you remember, and we'll talk about this a little later, where we had a tour and actually got to speak to the engineers. So what we're talking about, I should put a little more context here. Latency is when you're using the pen, it's the delay between where the ink comes out from the pen tip and you're moving. Now, if you're moving the pen very slowly, this doesn't matter because the latency is negligible, so it looks like the ink's coming out. But if you start, say, scribbling really quickly, you can actually see there's a delay between where the line forms and how fast your pen. So your pen can actually outrun the ink. So what you're doing is you're actually outrunning the PC at the time it can actually create that ink stream. And it's this is the annoying part with digital to analog. So when you're using a real pen on the analog world, on pen and paper, you don't experience that. But when you do digitally, you do. And that's why you get this weird feeling that like this isn't real. And it's a big issue and it's hard to solve. And when we talked to the engineers, I was just like, okay, so why are you solving it now? Like, why is this so difficult to do? And they explained some interesting stuff. Just having the display, the digitizer, and the GPU creates about 16 milliseconds because of the refresh cycles of delay. And so you already get that. Like that's automatically just part of the hardware. And so what they try to do is reduce as much as they can. And part of this is a new coprocessor and a new pen basically gets rid of it. Now, 21 milliseconds is not still technically perceptible. Like if you go really fast, I think you could probably see a bit of a delay. But in having used this new pen, I mean, it really now starts to blur the line between the feeling of analog and digital, and it's really impressive stuff. They're very proud of it, and I think it's pretty, I don't know, as a non-pen user, I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you use both pen technologies side by side, the older, slower one and the new, faster one, it's definitely noticeable. And it's honestly, it's a really nice change. It's a small change, but and subtle change, but it's a nice change, which I'm sure many people will appreciate. Now, going back to the design of the new Surface Pro, although I said it's basically the same as the Surface Pro 4, there are some slight differences, very minor differences that if you look closely enough, you'll see. For example, I believe the actual edges of the Surface Pro are slightly curved now, which gives it this sort of a nicer looking design. I think it
feels better. It feels better in the hand. It's not as sharp corners. It's not iPad round. I think some people were a little overreacting, like, oh, they made it like the. It's not rounded edges. It's just rounder edges, just less sharp.
It's also a lot lighter, or slightly lighter, which is nice, and it has a slightly better screen, I believe.
And the thermal vent that goes, the vent ridge that goes all the way around is also not as, it's also thinner and smaller too.
So yeah, it also comes in an Intel Core M3, i5, or Intel Core M3 or an Intel Core i5 or i7 with either 4 gigabytes, 8 gigabytes, or 16 gigabytes of RAM. Loads of different storage options, all the way up to a terabyte, just like the previous Surface Pro 4. So there's a whole bunch of options for you to choose from.
Well, don't forget, and the other big news, I think this is massive, is the Core i5 version is now fanless.
Yes.
So with Surface Pro 4, you can get a fanless version, was the Core M3 version. And to be honest, that's actually a really awesome device. I actually have that one. Having no fan is really a nice option. But the Core M3, it's similar to a Core i3, so it's not radically different, but obviously the performance is not nearly as good. With the Core i5, though, you're starting to, I mean, that's, for most people, Core i5 is more than enough, and it's neat to have that as a fanless option. This is partly due to Kaby Lake, which is also the new processors involved here, so that allows lower thermals, and it allows Microsoft to do that. In fact, not to change the subject too much, but Huawei today announced their new MateBook X, which is a new laptop coming out. And they managed to squeeze a Core i7 U processor into that that's also fanless. I've never seen a Core i7 fanless before in a laptop. That's pretty crazy. So this is going to start to become the norm, but a really neat option if you just don't like a lot of noise. Now, it still has the vent, the ridge vent on there, because it needs to have ventilation for the heat to escape, but there's just no active fan.
Now, one of the things the new Surface Pro doesn't have, which has caused quite a bit of complaining on the internet, is a USB-C port. Right. Now, we know this was going to be the case pretty much from the fact that the Surface laptop didn't have one either. Dan knows more about this than me, about the USB-C stuff and whatnot. But in short, it doesn't have one, and I'm not sure that's a bad thing.
Yeah, so this is going to be... and this is about perspective, I think. And I totally get a lot of people listening to this podcast, and a lot of people who read Windows Central regularly are going to be the people who want USB Type-C. They even know what it is. They know its capabilities. And I get that, because as someone who obviously is very much involved with technology, I too would not have mind the option. But we asked the Vice President of Devices there, Panos Panay, the Surface guy, as you guys probably know him, the one that's always introducing these devices on stage. We asked him directly about this, and it was a really good conversation. And you could definitely tell Microsoft struggled with this. This wasn't like, oh, no, we're not doing that at all. You know, this was they did prototype devices with it. So there was a discussion. There was a lot of back and forth. I felt like they were close to maybe committing to it, but they decided not to. And the reasons that they gave were a few of them. First of all, they cited Surface 3 as a reason not to do this, at least not right now. They're not against Type-C. They will adopt it at some point. But with the Surface 3, that's the non-Pro version, they used micro USB as the charger. So instead of the Surface Connect. And so this was the first time to try to standardize that. And that was kind of an experiment. And what they found was that people tended to lose their charger. And at the time when that device came out, a lot of people had micro USB chargers because of their smartphones. And what they would do is they'd just be like, well, I don't need the actual Surface charger because it's micro USB. I'll just use my phone charger. And you plug it in and it would light up and it'd be like, okay, you know. And then what they found out was like, oh, this is charging really slowly. Like, why does it take 10 years or 10 hours for this to actually charge? And it's
because... Or 10 years.
or 10, it would feel like 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's because, not all USB chargers were created equal. The actual phone chargers don't have the output needed to basically make a PC work. And you and I know that. People listening to this know that. Your average consumer does not know that. They just know, hey, this is the same plug, plugs in, it's technically charging, so what's the issue? And so they had a lot of customer complaints about that. Now, if you made this device, you'd be probably a little upset. You're like, it's the device is fine. You're just screwing up. And Panos gave me a really funny analogy. He was funny too because he hesitated to make this analogy, and he actually looked around the room. He's like, "All right, I'm going to do this because it's kind of funny." But he's like, if you just had one pair of socks, like you always know where those pair of socks are. If you have 10 or 20 pairs of socks, though, it's if you lose a pair, it doesn't really matter, right? Because you have more. And that's kind of the same thing with standardized chargers. Is that if you if you lose your Surface charger, well, okay, I'll just use another micro USB charger, or in this case, a Type-C charger. And that's where you start to run into these issues. Now, what was funny about that analogy is it was totally true for me. I have a Surface 3. I couldn't tell you actually where my Surface 3 micro USB charger is today. It's somewhere probably in my apartment here, but I too would just be like, well, I'll just use something else. And I had the same. So this does ring true for your average consumer, I think. And the problem with Type-C is it's the same thing as its strength. It's a universal port, so it can do everything: data, power, it can do displays. But there's a lot of different levels to it. So you can have 2 lanes, 2 PCIe lanes, 4 PCI lanes. Thunderbolt 3 is not the same as Type-C. So you can have a Type-C without Thunderbolt 3 or Type-C with it. And so there's a lot of complications here. And, for Microsoft right now, they're trying to make this as easy as possible. They did say they very much are into USB Type-C, but they want it to mature a little bit in the market and for it to stabilize before committing to it. I kind of get that. Now, I should point out, no matter what I say here, if you just really want that feature, no explanation is going to be good. I could tell you they found out USB Type-C causes cancer, and some people would still be like, yeah, but I still want it. So I get that. You're never going to satisfy, that core, 1% user base, but it is what it is,
Didn't they say that they were working on some kind of dongle for those who really need the USB-C stuff?
And this is the other point, right? And so at this point in the conversation, I was kind of like, all right, I kind of get that. It's still not going to make people happy, but, that's fine. But yes. Then he turned to his engineer and asked for this dongle, and it's a prototype, so we couldn't get photos of it. It's coming out in the fall, and what it does is it connects to the Surface Connect, the power charger, so the magnetic one. It just connects right there and has a little cord, and it just has a USB Type-C connector at the end. And it handles data and power because the Surface Connect port is Microsoft's universal port. So it does power, data. It connects to their Surface Hub. It can power displays, internet, all that kind of stuff. So if you think of Surface Connect as Type-C, it just looks differently. The analogy works. That's all this thing does, is convert it to Type-C. And now you can charge your Surface with your Type-C charger, or you can connect your Type-C thumb drive if you actually have one, which I think there are a few on the market. That's the other issue here. There's not a lot of Type-C peripherals, but say in 2 years, there are more, you can use this. And of course, because it's Surface Connect compatible, that means if you are listening to this and you have a Surface Pro 4, or you have a Surface Book, or a Surface laptop, it works there too. And to me, I kind of laughed. I was like, okay, I think that will shut up about 90% of the people who really want Type-C, because it's like a really clever solution if you think about it. For one, you're still getting the magnetic experience now, and people really do like that. If you trip on the cord, it just pops out. So you're still getting that. It's almost better to be able to go to Type-C as a dongle than have to use Type-C for dongle for Type-A, because everything is Type-A. Very few things are Type-C today. And so if you lose this, or you forget to bring it with you on a trip, you won't be screwed. Whereas if you only have Type C's and you forget that dongle, you probably are going to be screwed.
Yeah, no, I do think it's a cool idea, the USB-C dongle. It's kind of funny as well how it was like less than a year ago, people were like, oh, now we have to have dongles for these USB-C ports, and now we're going, now we need dongles for the USB-C cables. It's pretty funny.
I saw people in comments saying that. They're like, Microsoft just did this because they want to sell you dongles. I'm like, whoa. I thought Mac only used Type-C because Apple want to sell you dongles. Now it's the reverse. I'm like, how about there's just no conspiracy? There's just different philosophies on this. And we're in a transition period in technology, and you can't make everybody happy. Like people just, I mean, don't forget, this is a really thin device. It weighs 1.7 pounds. It's super thin. If you open one up, there's no space on the inside. So you can't put a ton of ports on this. I actually, and I could be wrong in this, I probably am wrong, but there are not a lot of tablets that have, like, say, full Thunderbolt 3. So people are asking, does the Surface Connect adapter do Thunderbolt 3? I doubt it, because Thunderbolt 3 is like a very specific thing. You need specific PCI lanes. We'll have to wait and see, but probably not. But Thunderbolt 3 just means it could do like 4K displays at 60 frames per second. It has 40 gigabyte throughput. But even there, it's weird because Dell has Thunderbolt 3 support, but only 2 lanes, so it doesn't do eGPU stuff. So once again, it's all over the place. Yeah, I think this was, I'm happy with that solution. For me, I'm just like, okay, that's fine. I don't really need eGPU support. And again, external GPUs like Razer Core, HP has one coming too. Like this is another niche market. It's a really cool market. But you have to understand, most people are not going to go spend a few $100s for a shell and then go spend another $600 for a GPU and then have an extra. I get the setup for eGPUs and I think they're awesome, but you have to recognize that most people are probably not going to use that, at least not for a few more years. So the idea of like making a device just for that, I get you want it, but not there. So.
It's probably also worth touching on the naming of the Surface Pro, because it's not the Surface Pro 5, and I think as Dad mentioned at the beginning, there is a reason for that. And in short, it basically is because Surface Pro is now it's established. It's a Surface Pro. It no longer needs to have a number after it, because every version from here on out will be minor iteratives, just slightly improving things here and there. Just like this one, the new Surface Pro is just a small update over the Surface Pro 4. But if you're a Surface Pro 3 user, the new Surface Pro has a lot more changes worth upgrading to. So a lot of people using tablets and computers don't upgrade every version. That's again a 1%er thing. So them changing the whole thing, here's just the new Surface Pro. Dell does this, HP does this. Even Apple does this with the iPad. They don't call it the iPad 7 or 8. They say the new iPad or the iPad Pro or whatever you want to call it.
And there's no easy solution to this, because I agree too. I think it's just, I feel like this category for Microsoft has arrived, right? Everything they sought out to accomplish with Surface Pro is now fulfilled in this device. Specifically, and now, they rate it at 13.5 hours of battery life. Now, that's, of course, a video loop test. But I can tell you from my experience that when companies do those closed video loops, they're standardized and they tell you how they do it. When they say like 13.5 hours, I'm fairly confident that's like 8 hours of like real usage. Like you're just, 50% screen brightness, Wi-Fi's on, and you're just using it on and off throughout the day like a real computer without thinking about the battery. You're probably going to get 8 hours, which for most people means all day battery life. And that may be, even slightly higher. So that's impressive, because the Surface Pro 4, 6 hours, maybe if you're lucky, 6.5 hours, But this is pushing it a little bit further. So there's that. There's also this thing now where they're focusing on instant on. So when you hit that power button, the display just turns on right away. It's going to feel like a true tablet. One of the cool things about the iPad and why it caught on so much was it was like a computer that did computer things, but that power button always turned it on instantly, versus you grabbing your laptop, opening it up, waiting for it to come on, get the little spinnies, and you have to log in and all this. All that I'll just use my phone, or I'll just use my iPad. But now that they can do this with the Surface Pro, it feels more instant. It's about getting into the experience very quickly. So I think that's a great feature. And yeah, when you add up all this stuff, you and I both actually got to see and use this device briefly. I'm not even a huge Surface Pro user, and that's because I'm spoiled. I have just every other device. I have powerful laptops, but there's always something intriguing about the Surface Pro, and this version just feels right to me. It's between the pen and the keyboard, and just like they just refined and perfected everything, and it just feels like, okay, this is that device. If they need to radically change things up, they'll create a new category if they need to.
Right. I mean, from here on out, I can't see the Surface Pro doing anything more than it currently can do without becoming an entirely new device itself. I mean, like I've said before, the only thing that I can see them doing that would be a air quotes drastic change from here on out would be the virtual bezel thing, which they have patented, which I assume will show up eventually, and that would be pretty cool. But the actual form factor, the actual device itself is defined now. They can't really change anything dramatically on it without creating an entirely new device that would be called something else entirely. If they were to make a Surface Pro that could fold, that wouldn't be a Surface Pro no more. That'd be something else. That'd be like a Surface Mini that could become a full tablet, whatever you want to call it. Surface Pocket. Anyway, so the Surface Pro name, I'm not too fussed about it. I think it's cool. It also kind of follows the whole Windows as a service thing, like hardware as a service. Why not have the Surface Pro every 16 months we update it slightly with some new improvements and up specs and whatnot? I like that idea. I think it's cool. And I mean, no one's going to shout at you if you call it the 5th generation Surface Pro or the 6th gen Surface Pro. I mean, I know it's not the Surface Pro 5.
Yeah, or Surface Pro 2017.
Right, yeah. I mean, if you need to refer to it a specific version, you can call it the 5th or 6th gen, just like you can with the iPad. Again, there's like 7th or 8th gen iPad. People say that, and that's how they, refer to individual releases.
Yeah. I was going to say, Razer has this issue too, where they just call Razer Blade, Razer, and Razer Blade Pro. They don't specify model numbers. Now, Dell does it by putting parentheses 9360, 9560, which is not exactly elegant either. It gets the job done, but, it works. Razer does it by, if you go to their support site, it'll be Razer Blade, parentheses 2015, Razer Blade 2016. Then they also, I believe, have Razer Blade, parentheses late 2016, because they actually released 2 updates in 1 year, so they have to actually make it different, and so there's tons of ways to do this. It's there's never a perfect solution, but it gets a little weird when you're like Surface Pro 9, it's just
Apple are gonna soon hit this problem with the iPhone. They need to figure out a new sort of naming scheme for the iPhone, because they can't keep numbering it. Because one day there'll be iPhone 706, and that's just going to be stupid. So you're going to have to...
I wouldn't be surprised if they do that this year too, right? Because 10th anniversary, they may, because there's supposedly going to be there's going to be 3 iPhones apparently. 2 are going to be standard, the traditional, and then the third one's going to be this crazier, newer one. That one may get this new designation.
Yeah, I reckon they'll call it the iPhone X. Anyway, Yeah, so the name I think is perfectly fine, and it also now, if you look at the full range of Surface devices, it fits in very nicely. You've got the Surface Laptop, Surface Pro, Surface Book, Surface Studio, Surface Hub. That's it. The 5 devices. I know the Hub isn't really a consumer device. The 4 consumer devices no longer have numbers on them, and they're just the top devices, which I assume means future Surface Books and Surface Laptops and Studios won't have numbers either. They'll just be, the new Surface Book 2018, whatever you want to call it.
That's gonna be super interesting to see if that sticks.
And I don't think it's going to become as confusing as it does with some other hardware makers. You know how Dell or HP release 2 a year. It's like, oh yeah, early 2018, late 2018. That can get a little bit. Oh, that's a bit confusing. But since Microsoft don't really have. They don't do updates every 12 months anymore, as evident with the Surface Pro release today and the fact we haven't had a Surface Book update yet. If you leave a long enough time between refreshes, it doesn't become confusing, because it'll be so long since the previous release that when you say, oh, here's the new Surface Book, it's like it's an actual new Surface Book. So, oh yeah, the Surface Book came out years ago, this must be a new one. Whereas if you release one in January of 2017 and one in September of 2017, if you're referring to the new one in September, people might think, is that the one from earlier this year, or is this a new one? So it won't be as confusing with Microsoft as it is with other hardware makers, I don't believe.
And Panos was pretty adamant about the fact that they just, don't release minor refreshes for their hardware. So, for instance, externally, if you just look at the Surface Pro 5 or the new Surface Pro compared to the Pro 4, it's like, oh, these look very similar. But there's so many, they emphasize how there's over 800 new customized parts for this device. Like, there's that. There's a fact that they are flat out saying it's a 50% increase in battery life versus the last version. It's 20% more powerful. The pen is twice as sensitive and accurate now. It also has tilt and rotate support, which a lot of hardcore pen users and artists were complaining that the previous version lacked. When you in the fanless version for the Core i5, like when you add all that up, it's visibly you don't notice it as much, but it makes a big difference. And we didn't even talk about the fact that they're going to offer in the fall the LTE version finally, which only came before in the Surface 3, but was never in the Pro series, which was always a little weird. And when we talked to Panos about that, he explained because there were a lot of compromises in putting a modem into these devices. He had to put these, really ugly lines and these weird windows for the antennas to get good reception. It zapped battery life just having it in there and kind of on standby. It took up room and would make the device thicker. And they were able to now put that into these devices without making it thicker, without changing the form factor at all, without putting gaudy lines on the device, and not affecting the battery life when it's just in standby, right? Because ideally how you want to have this is you just have your modem on, it's just there, but it's connected to Wi-Fi by preference. As soon as you go off Wi-Fi, you can hand off, to your cellular. And you want that to work like that without affecting your battery. And apparently, that's what they achieved. So now that will be an option coming in the fall as well. And I'm really excited about that because the idea then the Surface Pro is get 8 hours battery life for real world usage, instant on, LTE. Now you can take this thing anywhere, and it's just like the power of Windows 10 wherever you want.
Now it's the Surface phone.
Yeah, right. It just can't make phone calls.
Right. But, let's use Skype.
But you can see with them focusing a lot. Oh, and it also does eSIM support.
Oh, nice.
Which we've talked about before is a forthcoming technology. You don't need the physical card. And this will, work with the store. So you'll go to the Windows Store, browse AT&T. Hey, I'll take this 4G plan, 2 gigabytes. Here's my credit card, just purchase, and it unlocks. And now you have cellular connectivity on your device. That's the future. When we start to put all that together, you can kind of see how they're, these parts start to come together in a year or two for some sort of ultimate mobile device. And it's good practice for them. So.
Yeah, no, overall, I feel like the new Surface Pro is a nice, well-rounded update to the Surface Pro line. I'm still going to get the laptop over the Pro, but that's only because I prefer the laptop form factor over the Surface Pro form factor. Sure. That's not to say the Surface Pro is a bad device. It's a great device. As Dan said, we had hands-on back at build. And honestly, it's a fantastic device to hold and use. And it's just, satisfaction rate of using it just feels, it's great. It just makes it's a pleasure to use. But it's just not for me. It's not my... I don't need the kickstand. The kickstand thing annoys me. And some people are like, that's like the best thing. It annoys me to no end. I prefer just opening a lid on a laptop and going and starting to work. Also, it's worth... go ahead.
I was going to say, Surface Pro is really good for people who need a PC, like an actual computer, and travel a lot and wants something small and light. But it's also capable. But they're also, or I would say, obviously people who are artists and draw and use a pen all the time. If you're just a traditional laptop user, this isn't if you're just a hardcore laptop user, switching to Surface Pro is sort of a weird experience because it's not quite the same. A lot of people make the adjustment, but I fall into that camp too. That's why I kind of like Surface Book. But even there, it's I don't really need a screen that attaches kind of thing. So, the Surface laptop seems, like a really good value, but I shouldn't say value. It is overpriced, but a really good experience.
Yeah, I was going to mention the price. So as it turns out, the new Surface Pro is priced pretty much the same as the Surface laptop. The Surface Pro has a few different tiers that the Surface laptop doesn't have. For example, the Intel Core i3, the M3 model is obviously the cheapest, starting at $799, I believe.
Well, we should also mention there's a big change there. there's no pen included.
Right, I was going to say that. There's also no longer that. There's no pen included, which is why it's $100 cheaper than the original Surface Pro 4 launch low-end tier. Not only that, you also still don't get a keyboard included. So even though if you go up a few tiers and you start paying similar prices as you would be to the Surface laptop, if you buy the Intel Core i5 with 8 gigs of RAM, for example, if you buy the laptop, you pay, in the UK at least, I assume this is the same in the US, you pay almost £1,600 for the laptop, but you also pay the same price for the Surface Pro at the same spec. However, you don't get a keyboard and trackpad in the box. You also don't get a pen. On the laptop, you at least get that keyboard and trackpad. Now, it's not to say that means you're getting more for your money on the Surface laptop, because the Surface Pro has, obviously has a much higher resolution screen.
It has more sensors.
More sensors, and the laptop has a lower resolution screen. Slightly lower resolution anyway, but it all depends on what you need from a device, and what you're willing to pay for the amount you get in the box. I mean, for me, I kind of like the fact that the laptop is a laptop based on the fact that you can't separate the keyboard and trackpad, and so therefore you can't sell it to me separately. Ha ha.
Right.
But yeah,
and there's some interesting decisions made with selling the keyboard obviously separate, which they announced a few years ago. And now the pen is separate as well. So let's explain some of that rationale behind that. So they found out only about 30% of people actually used the pen with the Surface Pro, which isn't too surprising. As much as Microsoft is betting on pen, it's not quite at like 100%, obviously. So there is that issue you have to contend with. So the question is like, well, if only 30% are using it, but we're charging them for it, because it's built into the cost. It's not like you're giving it to you for free. Well, what if we take the pen out? We can reduce the cost, which is what they did. So I think that's a good decision. It makes a lower entry cost for people. And if you want the pen, you could just go and buy it. The other thing they did was the pen comes out in multiple colors, and those multiple colors match with the new Alcantara type covers. And what I mean by match is like you can buy the cobalt blue pen, but use the I forgot what the red color, the rouge or whatever it is, the red color type cover, and they match because of the way the patterning of everything works. So you can mix and match these colors together and just tailor it to your own experience. So you don't need to buy like red pen, red cover, blue pen, blue cover, which is kind of like how it was before. And so how do you do that for consumers, right? Like you just need to sell everything separately and leave it to them to buy it. And I think these are all good decisions. I can't see how it makes a difference. It's just like the Surface laptop. People complaining about it not having Windows 10 Home or Pro on it. It's like, if it did have that, they just would have charged you the extra $50 into that cost. So I don't see the big deal here with giving people choices.
No, yeah, me neither. So if you were a consumer, Dan, and you had only a certain amount of money to buy a new device this year, would it be the Pro or the laptop for you?
It would be the HP Spectre. No, I mean, and it's, this is kind of legit, right? It depends how you're spending money, and depends what you want. Now, the Surface brand is iconic for a lot of people, and I don't know. It's a tough question to answer because it's like I could easily get an HP Spectre and just get a lot more device for a lot less money. I'm talking about $300-400 cheaper, but the Surface is just awesome, and there's just something about it, right? That it's still unique enough out there. So I get why people spend the extra money for it. Now, if I had to choose between Surface Laptop and Surface Pro, I'd go with laptop just because I know how I use things. But the Surface Pro, I don't have to make that choice because I'll be getting both review units. So I'll let you know which ones I end up using. But I'm pretty sure I'm a Surface Laptop kind of person. I really, really like how that device feels. I like the display a lot on it. So we'll have to kind of see it in action.
So yeah, the Surface Pro is up for pre-order now. It goes on sale globally on June 15th. 26 markets, 25 markets, around there. There's a lot. Yeah, it's everywhere. You can buy the Surface Pro literally everywhere, which is nice.
Except Mexico and India.
Well, yeah, 26 markets in the whole world. So if there's more than 26 in the whole world, then they're not everywhere. But it's in a lot more places than a normal Surface product launch is, let's be honest. So let's move on to actually other announcements made at the event. Microsoft talked about Surface Studio and Surface Laptop. at its China event, specifically talking about how they're bringing those devices to more markets as well. What's interesting is the Surface Studio is now coming to 13 new markets, including the United States, Canada, not Canada, sorry, France.
Wait, the Surface Studio is coming to the United States?
Kingdom. The United Kingdom,
Oh, fair enough.
the UK, France, and as 11 other more markets. So finally, no longer is the Surface Studio limited to the US, Canada, and I think Australia, which was odd. But now it's available in a lot more places. And yay, I know I'm not going to buy one, but yay, it's here now, and equal rights to products and whatnot. And the Surface laptop is coming to China. And a few other places as well. So Surface is going everywhere. June 15th, Surface Studio will be available in more markets. June 15th, same with the laptop. So if you're somebody in the UK, for example, who hasn't been able to buy a Surface Studio until now and are also buying the laptop and the Pro, you're going to have a busy day on June 15th when the Surface Studio, the Surface laptop, and the Surface Pro arrive at your door. That's going to be pretty fun. You know what I should do? I should order all three and do like a triple unboxing video.
And I should mention, if you're in the United States and you live near a Microsoft store, you should be able to go down today, starting today, and see both the new Surface Pro and Surface laptop on display and check them out yourself. They should have them on, so you can actually try them out, see which one you like. 'Cause that's a tough decision. I think it's one of those, whichever one you get, you'll be happy with, but it's, it is, what do you prefer, inking and, tablet or full laptop? So it's always kind of tough. I want to address one question someone's asking, which is, and this is always comes up, which is accessories. So the new Surface Type cover, the new Surface pens, do they work with older Surfaces like the Surface Pro 4? Yes, they do. One of the benefits of Microsoft being conservative and sticking to its proprietary kind of connectors is that all these things work on the older devices. That's actually really good if you have a Surface Pro 4 and you pick up the new Surface Pen, which I don't believe is actually available yet for ordering, but will be in the next few weeks. You do get the 4096 levels of pressure sensitivity. You'll need a update that is coming through the Windows Update for the pen driver, which will give you the tilt and rotate effect as well. So, if you're really happy with your Surface Pro 4, you don't need to go get the new Surface Pro to enjoy a lot of these benefits. So for all the, complaints that people give Microsoft about not adopting Type-C, and don't forget that dongle too, when it comes out in the fall for the Surface Connect, will also work on all your older devices, or at least it should. So that is definitely a nice benefit.
It's also worth noting the type covers, the pens, and the Surface Dial will be available in more markets starting June 15th as well. Also, oddly, the new Surface mouse isn't the touch mouse, the Arc touch mouse. I have not been able to find it anywhere but the Microsoft US store still, so I don't know when that's coming. I would like that one to show up in the UK though soon, because that's a really nice mouse, the new Arc touch mouse. What's next on our list? I don't even know.
I guess we could talk about the Office stuff, and you can tell us a little bit about Whiteboard.
So Microsoft, alongside showing us the new Surface Pro, also demoed a new app called Whiteboard when we were in Seattle. This is basically multiplayer inking, as I like to refer to it as. It allows multiple people to join in on a single digital canvas from all types of Surface devices, whether it be a Surface Pro, book, laptop, whatever. You can join in on this digital canvas, invite your friends, and you can all ink on it at the same time. You don't have to be in the same room on the same Wi-Fi network. You can do it across the globe. It's essentially the same thing as, digital collaboration within Word or PowerPoint. You can do the same thing now with your pen. And honestly, it was one of the coolest things I think we saw at Microsoft. It's super awesome. They've done a lot of work to make the virtual collaboration feel seamless, in the sense that when you're drawing on the screen, obviously the ink flows very smoothly, but at the same time you see all of the collaborators' ink flow smoothly as well. Even though they're not there collaborating with you on that screen, their ink still flows out as if they were there right next to you. And it really is amazing. You get little tooltips showing you like people's faces where people are writing, so it doesn't get confusing. Got loads of different customization options, glitter pens and normal color pens and whatever, rulers. You can use your finger to draw as well if you've forgotten your pen, for example. And overall, it's a really great idea. It's part of Office, I believe, and it was not coming till later this year. But from what we saw a couple of weeks ago, the app is actually pretty far along and does work pretty well. And honestly, it's such a cool idea. They showed somebody using the Surface Pro and two other people using Surface Studios, and they were all interacting on the same canvas, drawing like diagrams and circling things and doing whatever you would normally do on a digital canvas. You can use this to take notes. You can use it to brainstorm ideas. You can use it to create art if you really wanted to, multiplayer art if you want. It's a cool idea, and I don't think it's a new idea. I think other companies have tried this before, but Microsoft are definitely sort of pushing it now on Surface. And they did mention it's a device for Surface, but they also said that doesn't necessarily mean it won't work on other devices down the line. So whatever that means.
Right.
But at launch,
they emphasized it's a UWP app. It'll be in the store. Any device can download it that runs Windows 10. But it seems to be optimized for Surface. What exactly that means, not entirely sure. But it'll work on other devices just as well. So that's kind of cool. And being UWP, they would do a mobile thing. It'll work there too. I agree. I think this is a really neat app when you tie into the My People thing that's coming with the Fall Creators update. This idea of social, I think it's just really neat in real time. And this idea that they created a dedicated channel between the apps for communication that just allows the inking stuff to get to sync is really impressive. But I don't know if we have a lot of use for it internally here at Windows Central, but it does seem like a fun app to use. I still don't draw with my pen, which is unfortunate. But if I did, this seems like a cool thing. I can definitely see companies using it, though. And yeah, I mean, I would like to see Microsoft do this more with their apps. This idea of like the social thing, being that we have broadband connectivity a lot of places now with devices. It just seems like a cool thing to have, especially with the My People. So yeah, coming this fall, we'll have more information as soon as that app is available. It's going to be free, but yeah, it should be it's technically, I believe, part of the OneNote team.
It's also pretty cool to see how quickly the ink shows up on the other devices that are also partaking in the same inking session. When the engineers showed us, they'd do the drawing on the actual device they were drawing on, and then it would basically instantly show up as smooth as butter on the other devices as well. It is honestly, it's really impressive. It does kind of go, wow, that's really cool when you try out for the first time. Yeah, that's Whiteboard. Microsoft also talked about a couple new inking improvements to other Office apps, such as you can now, if you vaguely draw an object, Office is smart enough to figure out what you were trying to draw and actually draw it better for you, which is a nice idea. I think when we were there,
do like a lot of shapes, like triangles and stuff, which you can already, I believe, do this in OneNote. But these features are basically being integrated into the rest of the Office apps.
Right, and there's also new pen heads and ink and whatnot. But yeah, overall, a lot more pen stuff. If I know none of this is interesting to you if you're not a pen user, which I'm sure a lot of you aren't, but if you are a pen user, great news. You can now do lots of things with the pen, which is great. And to be fair, this does sort of, apart from the laptop, this follows Microsoft's sort of Surface vision with, people interact with pens and touch and whatever else. This basically falls right in with their sort of overall vision of Surface. And I think it's a suitable place to announce Whiteboard and whatever else they did announce today.
Yeah, Microsoft was pretty adamant about that what we're seeing with Surface Pro today is basically the real first hardcore collaborations between the Windows 10 development team and the Surface team for hardware. And so you're going to start to see more of that going forward. Now, that may seem odd. To me, I was almost like, wait, you guys weren't always just working together? But it's not quite that easy when you have what they describe as the Microsoft culture. It is something, CEO Satya Nadella has been working very much at within the company. We talk about this all the time. The old version of, Microsoft was all these internal groups fighting against each other for resources and competing. And that's changed now to this company that cooperates internally. And now they're starting to get cross projects. And you would think, well, okay, the Windows team that wasn't always working with the hardware guys. And they were, I think, at probably a driver level, but not in terms of all right, let's make a new app that really sort of makes, shows off the best of what Surface can do, which is sort of what Whiteboard is. And they did point out that's a significant change because it's not, these cultural changes within massive companies take a few years to happen. And now the pieces are starting to come together, which means, of course, we'll probably see more of that. And that's always just good for people who are enjoying the Windows 10 and Surface experience. We should see more of that coming through, current devices and future devices as well.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was pretty impressed with the whiteboard. So I don't know if Dan was as impressed as I was, but I was like, wow, this is so cool. I have no usage for it. I'm never gonna. This is basically great for people who, students who have to do group projects, who are forced to work together in classes and stuff. This is great for them who have to do work from home, for example, or in a work environment where one of the members of the team is off sick or working from home. No longer do they miss out on the brainstorming session. They can obviously tune in via Whiteboard and see what's going on and even add little bits if they need to as well. I think it's a really nice idea. Although I guess you would use Skype or something to communicate voice whilst doing the inking, but it would be nice to see like built-in voice.
Yeah, we mentioned that last time. We'd still want to see inking in Skype. We need that to happen. And it has to be, you would think, something that's being worked on. But this was something I expect, like we're already seeing with Windows 10, they announced that build last week or 2 weeks ago that, universal pen support's coming to the OS, so that the idea of like you could just browse when you go to a scroll bar, the pen knows, oh, you want to scroll instead of inking, and it'll scroll. But when you go to a text box, it'll enlarge the text box and let you write in there, convert it to text, and then you can continue on. That is going to really, I think, accelerate pen usage. I know for myself it would, because I would actually use the pen significantly more. But I'd also imagine that means we'll start to see the pen tie into apps in more significant ways. I would love to see GroupMe get something like that, which seems ripe for that kind of technology, right? You can already do, animated GIFs. Is that the way it works?
Yes, it's GIFs. Definitely
it's GIFs. You can already do like animated GIFs. You can do photos. You can do maps. Have a little tab there for drawing. Seems like stuff that would, be on the roadmap, at least for a lot of the app teams who are involved there. So hopefully that will come soon.
So yeah, we mentioned that Microsoft, let us have a look at all of this stuff early. That's because Microsoft invited us to their super secret, super awesome Surface Labs and Surface buildings.
Building 88 and Building 87.
Yes, the two buildings that if you go to Microsoft, you want to go there pretty much. And we went there. Microsoft, opened their doors and said, hey, come on in, which I thought was a crazy idea. But, they let us in. Dan got to meet Panos and talk to him about the new Surface, which I'm sure was
let me
great.
Explain that just real quickly, because I think our audience will appreciate it. So like if you watch those events where Panos gets on stage and, and that goes through his spiel about the Surface and what it took to get there and then shows off the product. I had that at a personal level. It was just him and me. Technically, Mark was there too. But it felt like it was just him and me. And they're technically PR people minding him in the background. But it was like my own personal presentation of the new Surface Pro. And that was just super cool to experience because it's just as... He's so good at just like talking that it was just as effective as when you watch him on stage. So yeah, that was definitely
sadly I wasn't invited to that session. I'm the Windows 10 guy, I'm the software guy, so I had to wait outside like a school child and wait. But then once they were done,
and I did remember to make him, ask him if he would sign my Surface Book, which
he did.
I think he was hesitant because I felt like he was just like, you really want me to deface this beautiful machine, which you already put a sticker on? But he did anyway. It was really funny too because they offered him two pens, a blue or a black, and he was just like, I think he almost was just like offended at the blue. He's like, I'm not using blue. That's what he actually said, and then used the black one. Yeah. So yeah, now I'm one of the few that have a signed Surface Book. So thank you, Panos,
aren't you
for
lucky?
That experience. Yes.
But then we went over to where did we go? We went over to Building 87. And I was allowed in Building 87, which is nice. I was allowed in Building 88 as well. I just wasn't allowed in the meeting. Anyway, Building 87, we got there, and Microsoft toured us the Surface Labs. And a lot of you may have seen these labs before. I believe Ben Rudolph did like a live stream of the Surface Labs before. It was that whole experience again, but again on a more personal level. We went through like all the 3D printing room, which we wasn't allowed to take photos of because they were printing Surface phones. I'm joking. That's a joke. They were, printing whatever else. But then they also showed us the new Surface Pros, the Surface laptop. Then we went through and saw some awesome things. We saw like a really big Xbox controller. We were like, why is it so big? Turns out they printed an Xbox One controller that was... it wasn't a working controller, so it's not a product. But it was just basically, it gave a full-size adult the experience of a 5-year-old holding a normal size controller. That's basically what it was, and I thought that was a really cool idea. Just lots of cool things like that. They showed us, some of the...
So let's explain why they would do that, because it sounds like they didn't just do that for the fun of it. But what they were trying to do is when they were creating the Xbox One controller, they want to make the size of it basically in the middle. So if you're a 5-year-old or you're a 6'4" adult, using this controller, you would get a similar experience where you could reach all the buttons. So they had to find the middle ground. So that's how they did that. They created a giant controller, which simulated a 5-year-old. And sure enough, it was totally usable in the sense you could reach all the buttons. And so those are the kind of tests they do. They also did it for Microsoft Band. They actually have a machine that you stick your arm into, and it was cameras that went all the way around. It's sort of like a fMRI machine. And it took pictures and then made a 3D graph of your arm. And they did that for hundreds of subjects, apparently, so they can get a rough idea of like what the average arm looks like. So when they create the band, it would be the middle ground for that. And that was the human lab. I forgot what the specific name was, like Anthro something, but that's all they did was measurements. And it was a really cool thing. They did for HoloLens too, where they would take pictures of people's heads and do 3D imaging so that it was comfortable, and they would do weights and all that. Very cool lab just to see all that happen.
A lot of people don't realize the amount of work that goes into building a product like a controller, for example. Like, you don't think that, they would have had to like measure thousands of people's of hands just to get a rough idea of the perfect size, or the average size of a controller that would benefit the most people. It's like you just think, we just built a controller and it felt good in my hands, so it feels good in everyone's hands. That's what you would think. No, they spend months researching the smallest of stuff just to make everything as perfect as possible. It's almost an Apple level of detail and like just care that they're putting into their products, which is honestly really, really nice. We also got to take a look at the world's quietest room, which was an interesting experience, to say the least.
It's called an anechoic chamber for
right. So essentially, for those who haven't seen this room before, it's a big room detached from the rest of the building 87 and the world, I guess. And basically, there's not really a floor. It's just a net you walk on. All the walls and the ceiling and under the net are covered in this special sort of like soundproofing.
Sound absorption
materials. And when you shut the door, it's the quietest space in the world. It measures, I think, didn't they measure 0?
-20.
-20. Wow, yeah. So they measured, so 0 would be, what you would think silence is. No, this is more than silence.
Yeah, it's quieter than what you can perceive. It's so quiet because what they would do then, they close the door and they turn the lights off.
Yeah.
And it's pitch black at this point too. So it's complete sensory deprivation. And you can actually like hear your heartbeat. And when you swallow, it sounds extremely loud. It's and apparently the longest someone ever stayed in there by themselves was for about, I think, 45 minutes before it was just unbearable, where it's just too quiet. But they use that to test for audio, including things like Skype, believe it or not. So their head engineer there, Gopal, was talking about how, like, okay, and this is something that speaks to me because I used to study language. English, we have like, I could say dog, or I could say dog or dog, and it all means the same thing. It's a little furry creature. Other languages, including Chinese, I believe Korean, and some African languages are what are called tonal. So how high they say the words, if I say dog versus dog, it actually would change the meaning. And that's something very bizarre for English speakers, but for other languages in the world, it's pretty common. And so what they do is when you're on Skype, you want to make sure that people can hear those distinctions in the different ranges. So that's what they use these rooms for, to test how quiet things are and how the audio comes through. And they also do things like fan noise and how loud that is and all that kind of stuff. So very fascinating.
Yeah, no, when they turned the lights off in the room, the only way I could describe it was it felt claustrophobic, but obviously it wasn't. It's a big room. But since you can't see anything and your ears aren't reacting to any sound, it just feels like you're closed off from everything. And I moved my arm at one point, and I could the whole room was sure could hear me move my arm when it was just like rubbing off my clothes here, whatever. It was such a strange experience. And I asked the guys there if they had ever tried to nap in there, which I assume that would be the best nap in the world if you were to nap in.
A lot of people do those chambers for meditation. It's supposed to be very good. They also did things like they have a room where it simulates sunlight. They turn this light on. That was a surprise. Yeah, they turn the light on, and it's like you're basically standing outside on the most beautiful sunny day at noon, right below the sun. And they use that for testing displays, how good displays look in the sun. And it really just neat stuff. So a ton of work and research goes into this technology. That's one reason why they don't release stuff. They try not to release stuff until it's ready, but that's what they test in here. And what's cool about having that all one building, of course, is less leaks, right? So this is one reason why the Surface team has been very good with keeping secrets, is they do it all there. So they need a part. Like, for instance, I mentioned earlier, 800 original custom parts for a Surface. So when I say custom, it's not like, oh, some company in China was, makes this. I mean that even the screws they make in the lab there. So the engineers, they call it, was it fail fast? I think it is. So what they want is their engineers to take risk and make new things. And then they can print them right up and get the next day and see how well it works. But the idea here, of course, is that you can experiment faster and fail faster to figure out, all right, what's the right thing here, instead of taking like 6 months and sending stuff out and prototyping, and then it shows up on some jerk's Twitter account. Microsoft's working on a new this. It's all internal, and they can work faster and iterate more. And it's just it's a really fascinating. This is why when people say like, "Oh, Microsoft's not committed to hardware," it's like, well, what we saw was commitment. The machines in there, the 3D printing. I mean, there's even that lab itself was millions of dollars for the anechoic chamber. So they're definitely, and they have more of those apparently on campus. So
yeah, no, honestly, the whole tour, I guess you'd call it, was a really eye-opening experience that we're very grateful for. Thanks, Microsoft.
Yes.
I think that's pretty much it. I think that's the entire event. Was there anything else announced? I don't think so.
Well, yeah, other companies did.
Oh, yeah.
Huawei announced the MateBooks. HP had some things come out this week. Definitely a busy week for hardware. Good if you thought, the PC hardware now is just, it's so killer. The stuff from Huawei that came out is just insane. This MateBook X, it's 2.3 pounds. It has the same aspect ratio as Surface, a 3x2, which I'm so excited about, seeing companies starting to get on board with that. I'm seeing HP do it in a few of their devices now finally too. They're also using precision touchpads, the Huawei. And so like a lot of these companies are just doing it right. And they were really creating some outstanding hardware. So if you do want Surface or Surface-like stuff, but it's out of your price range, there are a lot of good options that I could honestly and wholeheartedly recommend as good alternatives that are sometimes even better. If you really are hooked on Type-C or need Thunderbolt 3, there are options out there. So make sure, you check those out. We'll be reviewing those new Huawei devices sometime in June. Also look for our new Surface Pro and Surface laptop reviews. Will be coming out in a couple of weeks as well. And make sure you go to our forums at Windows Central. If you want to discuss this stuff or talk to other people about it, we have some of the world's largest Microsoft forums. So make sure you jump in there.
Yeah.
And are we doing a podcast this Friday?
So, I don't think so. I mean,
we'll see how the week goes.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, we don't, unless there's a huge news this week, which I don't think there will be. There probably won't be a need to do a podcast. So what we'll do instead is we'll upload the video on demand version for this episode on Friday, where we would normally do the live show. So you technically have an episode on Friday, and then the Friday after we'll go back to doing live. Because I still haven't uploaded the last week's episode yet either, so I need to do that.
Sounds like a plan. So, and we should also mention coming up in the next few weeks as well, we'll be going to E3 out in LA, where Xbox and Microsoft and Scorpio will be announced and revealed, and we'll learn more about it. We have some meetings set up there, and of course, the big event is on Sunday. I forgot the exact date, but as we get closer, we'll of course cover that more. So stay tuned for that, and we'll do a few questions and answers now for the live podcast. Otherwise, thank you for listening. Leave us a comment. Don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to check us out on Thursdays as well, where we do our Microsoft Gaming Libations, where me, Zach, and Jess Corden get to play some video games and just chill out and talk to you guys. We also give out codes for games, for free games there as well, so it's always worth it to jump in. But thanks for tuning in, folks. We appreciate it, and let us know what you think of the Surface Pro. Take care, everybody.